What if I told you that kryptonite wasn't Superman's only weakness? Superman has got to be one of the most overpowered heroes to ever exist. He's the fastest being alive, he can shoot lasers out of his eyes, he has incredible strength, and he's almost invincible. His weakness, of course, being kryptonite. But Superman also has a second, lesser known weakness just as effective as that green alien crystal: video games. Superman's video game history is miserable. Hundreds of millions of Superman comics have been sold, Superman movies have made billions in the box office, yet Superman video games have always been terrible. Batman and Spider-Man have multiple great games, Wonder Woman should have had one, and even Captain America has a serviceable enough attempt at a video game. So why doesn't Superman have anything? Why doesn't one of the most popular heroes ever have a single good video game? It's gotten to a point where nobody's even willing to try. It's been almost 20 years since the last attempt at a proper standalone Superman game, and the result was less than ideal. Rocksteady, who was pretty much our only hope at a decent Superman game, ended up making Suicide Squad instead, and we all know how that turned out. To answer why we don't have any good Superman games, we must look at the games themselves, and to do that, we must turn the clock back to 1979. With the success of the original Superman film in 1978, Warner Bros. Also wanted to sell a Superman video game. Luckily for them, they had recently bought out Atari back in 1976, so they knew exactly where to release the game when it was ready. The problem then was who was actually going to make the game. Warren Robinett was first approached and he was asked to take his prototype of a game that would later turn out to be 1980's adventure and make it into a Superman game. He refused, but agreed to give part of the code to John Dunn in order to help him out. Dunn agreed to the job, but only if the game was allowed to take up 4 kilobytes of space. Atari games at that time could only take up a maximum of 2 kilobytes, and as funny or silly as it may sound to negotiate over 2 kilobytes of space, that was a big deal back then. It's double the space, and only 2 games up to that point in Atari's history had used 4 kilobytes. So Superman was going to be something big, and when it finally launched on September 28, 1979, it instantly became an important piece of gaming history. It's actually the first officially licensed superhero game ever. As a game though, I can't be too mean to it. A fridge probably has more gaming capabilities than an Atari 2600. Here's a fridge running Doom. So yeah, to no one's surprise, the 1979 game is as basic as it gets. You can fly around, and to be honest, I can't really tell what's going on. This is a bit nauseating to look at, so let's move on. 6 years would pass before the next Superman game, this time titled Superman the Game. I mean, what is this? There are a bunch of citizens on the screen that you need to save before Darkseid gets to them first. At least the Atari game tried to resemble the comic books a bit. This doesn't even put in the slightest effort. I guess it's the first instance of Darkseid being a playable character, but it's just a lifeless sprite. I could throw a random rock into the ocean and it would be closer to playing as Darkseid than whatever this is. Following the 1985 game, we enter into an era where due to technical limitations, it was less so that Superman games were being made and more so that Superman was shoehorned into already existing formulas. We had the Superman Double Dragon ripoff, the Superman Streets of Rage ripoff, and even the Superman Space Harrier ripoff. All of them included 1 or 2 of Superman's abilities, but in my opinion, it's the combination of all or at least most of Superman's powers that make a Superman game. Otherwise, it just looks to me like some developers wanted to cash in on Superman's brand value and just slapped his name on a pre-baked formula. Even the naming of the games was lazy. In 1987 we got Superman, in 1988 we got Superman, in 1989 we got Superman the Man of Steel, which is fine, and then in 1992 we were back to just Superman. We won't talk about all these games, just the ones that stood out to me. Taito Superman is probably one of the best Superman games. Despite its technical limitations, it captures the essence of the character really well. The sprites are very lively, you get to fight enemies while flying, and some of Superman's abilities like heat vision are also present. Not that the game is anything exceptional or even good. For an arcade game that you'll play a couple of times and then forget, it gets the job done, but it gets repetitive really quickly. Comes to show how bad of a state Superman games are in when mediocrity looks like a beacon of quality. The other game from this era I want to talk about is the Double Dragon ripoff. I don't want to talk about it due to its gameplay, that's generic enough, but due to its story. You see, this game is based on the very famous comic The Death of Superman. In it, spoiler alert, Superman dies. The death and return of Superman follows that arc and introduces 4 new playable Supermen. They play virtually the same, but at least we got something different. I love how the title of the game spoils its plot. I guess they thought nobody would want to play a game where Superman just dies, so they added the return part just to be safe. All of that was in 1994, and it would take another 5 years for another major Superman game to drop. This one, however, would be different. It would be the first 3D Superman game. It would be an open world game where Superman could fly anywhere and beat up bad guys. It would push the Nintendo 64 to its limit. It would also be one of the worst games of all time. Superman 64 is straight up abysmal. In theory, it sounds like a good game. You can fly around, beat up enemies, and even use your super strength to throw around large objects. Just like in theory, you could press subscribe if you want more content like this. It really helps the channel out. In practice, however, none of these things are particularly satisfying to do, except for the helping out the channel part. I'm probably understating this. It would probably be more preferable to watch paint dry in slow motion than play this game. Funnily enough, I consider this to be the first proper Superman game. It's the first one that combines some of his core abilities together. It's not a game plus Superman, it's a Superman game. Too bad it barely works. Most of the gameplay consists of flying around a mostly empty open world and going through sonic rings. You can also go inside some buildings and fight enemies at 3 frames per second. Apparently, this game had a tumultuous dev cycle, with only 10% of the planned content making it into the final version. And to be honest with you, I'd take this over any of the Superman games that came before it. I'll take a terrible game over a mediocre one any day of the week. At least someone took a swing. They might have missed wildly, but they still took it. Much more preferable to me than making a safe Double Dragon or Streets of Rage knockoff. As a bonus, this means that going forward, it can't get any worse than this. It's not going to get a lot better, but this is undoubtedly the bottom of the barrel for Superman games. A port for Superman 64 was actually planned, believe it or not, but for obvious reasons, it got cancelled. So Titus Interactive, the devs behind Superman 64, got to work on another Superman game, and despite working on it for 2 years and it almost being ready, their license expired and their next Superman game never got to the public. 3 years would need to pass for the next Superman game to release, and this time we got 2 of them. One for the original Xbox and one for pretty much every other console. Let's start with the Xbox game first. Superman the Man of Steel manages to be a slight upgrade over Superman 64. That's about as high as the praise for this game can get. It looks good, but it wasn't received very well at the time. You'll spend a large amount of time flying around putting out fires or rescuing civilians. You can also obviously fight enemies, but that's executed in a really bland way. Your main weapon is Superman's heat vision, and that's not particularly engaging. The other game released during that time, Superman Shadow of the Apocalypse, is a lot better. A lot better in the sense that Superman 64 was terrible, Man of Steel was bad, and this is just mediocre. On the positive aspects, this game is based on Superman the animated show, and its cast members voiced the characters in the game. The cel-shaded style of the game is also reminiscent of the show, which is solid stuff. But once again, the gameplay is not it. It looks so boring, just enemies standing around waiting to get hit. I mean, it works, it's functional, but it's not fun. Another 4 years would pass before the next Superman game was released, and this one is probably the best of the bunch. Superman Returns is a solid attempt at a Superman game. You get to fly around a massive metropolis at really high speeds, you get to fight an abundance of villains, and everything just about works well enough. The flying is so fast, in fact, that it's borderline nauseating because the frames can't really keep up with Superman. As per usual, the combat is the game's weakest link. consider me shocked. It's still probably the best combat system in any Superman game, but the bar is so low that it found the Earth's core. Superman Returns also finds a cool way to circumvent Superman's invincibility by making Metropolis have a health bar and not the hero himself. This game, however, was received pretty poorly at launch, and the main reason is pretty funny. You see, the final boss fight isn't against Zod or Bizarro or Darkseid or anybody else for that matter, it's against a tornado. Honestly, totally understandable crash out by critics at the time. And that's sort of it. Superman hasn't had a console game in almost 20 years. And Superman Returns wasn't even the last Superman game. That title would actually belong to the Jakks Pacific Superman plug-and-play game. And I'm not trying to throw any shade to the plug-and-play games. They're good enough to distract a kid for 10 minutes, but it's not a game that's up to par with Superman's legacy. Superman didn't go out with a bang, but a whimper. And a massive tornado for some reason. There is one more game, however, one that would actually be good, one where you could fly without frames being an issue, one where you could feel Superman's power. Blue Steel was meant to release in 2008, but due to the recession hitting and its publishing company going out of business, Blue Steel will forever remain as the good Superman game that was never meant to be. The game's lead designer wrote a lengthy article about the game, posted prototype footage, and talked in length about the features it was meant to have, and there's so much more info here that this game probably deserves a video on its own. This still doesn't answer the question, however. Blue Steel wasn't released due to unfortunate circumstances, but why hasn't anybody else tried ever since? Is it even possible to make a good Superman game? Let's examine that. In my opinion, the biggest problem in making a Superman game is that Superman and the average gamer are practically the exact opposite. Superman wants to save people and keep the peace, but players' first instinct is to usually destroy. While other heroes with good games like Batman or Spider-Man don't have the ability to destroy cities or even the world, Superman does. So the question now goes from how do we make a good Superman game to how do we make a game where the player has the abilities that allow him to destroy the city he's in, but isn't allowed to use them. One solution is playing like evil Superman, like the Injustice games or Suicide Squad, which the less said about that, the better. But that feels like such a cheap cop-out. I'm tired of so many pieces of media having evil or edgy Superman. The whole point of the character is that he is good, he is the Boy Scout, he has unwavering morality because otherwise that's not Superman. And while it is admittedly tougher to write a Superman story compared to pretty much any other hero, it's been proven time and time again that if someone cares enough about the character and cares to write a good story under the restrictions provided, then Superman stories can be just as compelling as the best of them. So that idea goes out the window. If someone came to me and told me, Spyro, I don't know why I'm doing this because you have 0 years of experience as a game dev, but here's $200 million to make a Superman game, here's what I would do. My first order of operations would probably be to nerf Superman to the ground. Let's say somebody slipped kryptonite in his coffee or something, we'll figure it out. But Spyro, you might say, weren't you just saying that the whole point of a Superman game was him having most of his abilities? Precisely, nerfing Superman serves many functions. As we've established, it's kind of ridiculous how many abilities he has, so we could start off with just flying and some basic combat and slowly add to that both to not overwhelm players and give a sense of progression. Not only that, but that could work as an excuse for Superman to not have the power to destroy big structures. As for his invulnerability, I guess we could give all ground enemies kryptonite bullets. This is probably stretching comic accuracy to its limit, but I struggle to see how ground enemies could otherwise pose a threat to the player. Because that's another problem, you need to be able to lose in this game. Even in games with God mode cheats like GTA San Andreas, they might be fun at first, but they always eventually get boring. A Superman game needs to make him vulnerable while also not completely overlooking Superman's abilities. I don't think Lex Luthor manufacturing kryptonite bullets would be that much of a stretch. And you could give Superman his full powers back for the final battle, where I guess after a city evacuation, the player would be allowed to go ham for just one time. In my head it could work, and because all this sounds like a lot of fun, and fun can get monotonous, we can break up the Superman segments with Lois Lane stealth missions. Now I'm cooking with gas. And you could also have a Clark Kent side game where he competes with other journalists to generate the most clicks for the Daily Planet. Okay, maybe scratch the last part, I probably need to cut down on Yakuza 0. So that's my rough pitch for a Superman game. Genuinely, and I don't usually ask for this, let me know in the comments, is this the worst thing you've seen? What would you change? How would you make a Superman game? Since we know nobody's trying to make a Superman game, we can figure it out here and send it to Rocksteady or something. And if you do happen to be a publisher with $200 million to spare, you know how to contact me. I don't think a good Superman game is inherently impossible. Difficult? Yes. Superman games have all suffered from a mixture of lack of technology, poor execution, and unfortunate circumstances. But if there's a studio out there passionate enough that is given enough time and money, I refuse to believe that a game where the final boss is a tornado is the best a Superman game can get. Thank you for watching the video, a lot more videos like it are on the way, so subscribe if you're interested in that. You can click here to watch Daredevil's arguably worst video game history, and until then, I'll see you in the next one.